The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast studios and center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to check us out online on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find out about the programming we have available for you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net. And this show is being brought to you around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and iHeartRadio. Our guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is John B. Alexander. He is a retired senior Army officer with decades of experience with a wide range of phenomena. Traveling to all 8 continents, he has encountered events that defy common explanation. He has met with shamans in the Amazon, the Himalayas, and Andes, East and West Africa, and northern Mongolia. In Tonga, he dived into the ocean with humpback whales and was involved with the telepathic experiments with wild dolphins in the Bahamas. Joining me now is John Alexander. And John, welcome to the X Zone.
Well, glad to be here. How are we doing, Rob?
We're doing fine, thanks, John. Tell us about your book, Reality Denied.
Well, as you mentioned in the intro, I have done a lot of traveling, have been involved in a wide range of phenomena, kind of split up into several categories, one of which were things we did in the military, and I suspect some of your listeners are certainly familiar with remote viewing and probably metal bending and things of that nature. I might mention that Uri Geller blessed me with the foreword for this book. I've known him for a long time. And this is an attempt to just actually try to encourage people to go out and experience these things for themselves. And they say there's, various phenomena are out there, and I argue that the evidence is much more readily available than most people realize.
Why do you think there's such an interest in the paranormal these days in the 21st century?
I'm sorry, I missed...
My question was, why do you think there is so much interest in the paranormal here in the 21st century?
Well, I'm not sure that it's more than it has been in the past. But one of the things that's obviously making a difference is, as you mentioned, social media, the availability of the Internet. I was just on looking at YouTube, and take your site, for instance. You've got dozens and dozens of interviews up there. So people can now go in and do the research quite easily on their own.
What is your favorite aspect of the paranormal?
I couldn't begin to guess. And that is so broad. Of course, I did a book on UFOs. I used to actually run a program back when I was on active duty, very similar to the one that's been very recently discussed, New York Times article. When I did my doctoral committee, my head of my dissertation was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She, of course, is the one who brought hospice to this side of the pond, and along with Raymond Moody had been involved or creating the whole notion of near-death experience and getting the information out on those sorts of things. I became the president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Active duty, I used to actually teach psychokinesis, a PK metal bending that we were discussing, familiar with the remote viewing program. So there's not a lot that we haven't touched in one form or another.
What's your take on UFOs as a former member of the military?
Well, first line of the book that I wrote is UFOs are real. The last paragraph is something like, and whatever this is, it is more complex than we ever imagined, and maybe more complex than we can imagine. I also don't think we are nowhere close to getting answers to these complex issues, and I argue we're not even at the front end of asking the right questions yet.
So where do you think we should be asking the right questions? Where is the beginning of the line?
Well, that's the problem that I really don't know. No, you know, you see in the last few days there have been articles coming out. The Washington Post had one, an opinion piece. There's been a recent release about a naval sighting in 2015, which is quite good. But the point is, this is a global phenomenon. It has been around for millennia. I do mention that I sort of have an agenda, and that is to assist in making it permissible for our best and brightest scientists to get involved in studying these terribly complex issues. I argue again that this is at least as complex as AIDS or cancer, and yet the attention we pay to it is minuscule by comparison.
Well, that's because the number of people who are affected are minuscule in comparison as well.
No, that's not true.
Oh, I beg to differ, sir. You know, there are more people that suffer with AIDS and cancer than report UFOs.
No, 100% of the people are going to experience transition and whether or not there's life beyond death. And by the size of reporting UFOs, I mean, we're talking an estimated 10% of the adult population, which is significantly larger than what certainly AIDS issues.
But if these things that people are reporting are from other planets, how come there's no concrete evidence that can satisfy the masses?
Well, you just made a huge leap in suggesting that, you know, if UFOs, therefore, you know, from other planets. I happen to come down against the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
All right, so what do you believe these UFOs are? Do you think that they're interdimensional,
No idea. Well, let's start with what do you mean by a UFO? And the problem here is that I got little balls of light, people report. We've got craft reported at more than a mile across, and thousands of variations in between. So not even sure, and I don't think the UFO community, whatever that is, addresses these things. We don't even have a firm definition of what it is we're addressing. Therein lies the problem that, like I say, we're not even at square one yet.
What do you think it'll take to get us to square one?
I don't know. It's, you know, these phenomena, first of all, you know, in one of my slides and most of the presentation starts with from near-death experiences to poltergeist to PK to firewalking to interspecies communications to UFOs, even to cryptozoology, and I think that they are all interconnected somehow, although the people who look at them tend to stovepipe the individual issues. And it's, like I say, whatever we're dealing with, terribly complex. It does affect a large number of people, probably 70 to 80% of the certainly adult population will have experienced some kind of phenomena that they can't explain.
But isn't
the others
that
probably have and just deny it.
But isn't that just the same as the UFO phenomena? They experience something, but they don't know what it is. The same thing with those who claim to have experienced other aspects of the quote-unquote the paranormal. Could these not be just normal occurrences that occur to these people under different circumstances, thus making them unknown?
Well, I argue we shouldn't use the word para, except maybe for maybe parachutes. But as far as the other things, it means similar to. And I think, I don't know if we're agreeing here or not, but these phenomena are ubiquitous.
You and I have to take our commercial break. Please stand by. X-Zone Nation, our guest this hour is John B. Alexander, and he's the author of Reality Denied. His website is www.johnbalexander.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can watch the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV, and the X Chronicles newspaper is still available with our compliments at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Exonation, our guest this hour is John B. Alexander. He is a retired senior Army officer with decades of experience with a wide range of phenomena. What was your rank in the Army, sir?
Well, I was a colonel when I retired.
Ah.
I covered everything in between. I went in and enlisted, and senior enlisted OCS now. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service, sir.
All right.
Okay, so let's talk about your experiences in Brazil. Can you talk about your experience in the Umbanda ceremonies in Brazil?
Well, Umbanda. Well, we've been to Brazil many times. I do work down there in what I call the straight world, so I get invited periodically. And there was a particular incident in Curitiba, Brazil, that is, although we attended Umbanda ceremonies in several places. For the audience, this is a spiritist religion that was obviously transported in from West Africa with the slave trade. Now, unlike some of the others, we can talk about Santo Daime or using ayahuasca, for instance, but Umbanda is strictly a religious ceremony, and lots of drumming and very mystical experience. What happened of most interest was that we were attending a rather large gathering, about 300 people, and maybe 10 gringos who were, external had come in. And I haven't got time to explain all of it, but among the things that happened is that my wife, who seems to be susceptible to these spiritual experiences, is out there, and they asked if anybody wanted a healing. She joined a short line, and as the young lady who was the healer was in front of her, all of a sudden something went and whoop, and sort of jumped inside her, if you will. That's her description of it. What we can say from an observational standpoint is all of a sudden Victoria, who's normally rather quiet and withdrawn, is out in the center of the stage area there, whirling around, and literally stopped the show. And these are people who have seen possession take place on a routine basis. This is part of the religion. Exactly what happened, don't know. This went on for maybe 20 minutes or so. She claims she has no conscious recollection of what transpired in the meantime, and I've discussed this in the book and include photos of her, like I say, out there twirling on the floor with onlooking of all these people who are, they're used to seeing this, but, say, not with foreigners.
Okay, so what do you think happened?
Well, I can only give you her, description, and that was that she was willing to step outside of her body and allow a discarnate entity to experience human interaction for a short period of time. I should mention that as at particular ayahuasca, we were doing a number of ceremonies and have attended Umbanda ceremonies at numerous places. But the spiritist religion, like I say, assumes that there are discarnate entities that can interact with us in a living form at this juncture. One of the things that I describe in the book, we were in Rio de Janeiro and at a Kardec ceremony, and there with me, I usually have a Brazilian colonel, speaks fluent English and is sort of an escort, and we were there with his wife. Again, pictures of that in Reality Denied, and the point was that his wife had been totally bedridden, had been given up on by conventional Western medicine, and yet went into these religious ceremonies and totally healed. And if you want, we can talk about John of God, which is another aspect to another place, a specific healer.
Well, sure. Let's talk about John of God, because I've heard pro and con with him. So let's get your side.
Well, we visited Aberdeen several times. I frankly think this is the real deal. And I don't say that lightly, and I view myself as kind of a moderate skeptic, actually. I go into these things questioning reality. But John has been at this for many years. He now practices almost exclusively out of Aberdeen. He used to have several centers around Brazil. When we first went down, there were a few hundred people, and he treated everybody, and the service was a little different. The last time I was there about 2 years ago, thousands of people visiting, literally coming in tour buses. Part of this is post-Oprah. Oprah Winfrey went down and had done like nearly, I think, a full week of programs from there. But the healings that take place, up to and including, apparently, resurrection of the dead. Wow. Having said that, and having seen some fairly miraculous things happen, I also note that, particularly the last time we were there, everybody who came in a wheelchair left in a wheelchair. So the question then becomes, why is it that some people are healed and others not? We also, are you familiar with Whitley Strieber?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Well, when we last went down, Anne, his wife, was quite ill, and I had talked to Whitley about this and suggested they try to go, and they felt that her condition was not good enough to make the trip. So they had sent me a picture of her, which I had taken along. Now, they did know I was going to Brazil, but they did not know when I would be at the Casa in Aberdeen. And so I took the photo with me, and then did kind of a private healing kind of thing. They have stations at the Casa where this can be done. And following that, I sent an email to them saying, okay, this is when this transpired. And by the way, I wouldn't have mentioned this except that Whitley has given me permission to use her name. I did not do this before. But the point was that she said that, she obviously did not survive it or have a miraculous transformation. She did have, I said, improved greatly for at least a period of time.
All right, but isn't it true that not everybody gets healed with John of God? So how can we give him any credibility? The same thing that God of John does in Brazil. Many people who go to the different evangelistic camps across the United States say that Ernest Angley, the late, great Reverend Billy Graham, was also to do these kind of healings. So how can we pay more attention to somebody?
It's not exclusive, but there does seem to be certainly a concentration of energy. One of the reasons that I favor Brazil and point to them is that, as I mentioned, I do work down there, and with very senior people. We're talking, ministerial level people, senior general officers and admirals in the Navy and whatnot.
All right.
Point is, they are well educated and in educational systems that are much akin to ours, and yet they are able to incorporate the belief in a spiritual realm or spirituous world along with their education and a materialistic view. And I try to point out that this belief in spirits and spiritism around the world is much more prevalent than people give it credit to. In the West, we think of a spirit world and a physical world as separate and distinct, if you even accept the possibility of a spirit world.
Right.
For them, it's totally integrated.
But that doesn't make it right, or that doesn't make it wrong. It's because we, here in the Western world, enjoy the freedom of choice. And if I, for one, do not believe in it.
It's not a freedom of choice. It's a freedom of understanding that you're having, there are other interactions that take place.
But once again, that's a matter of perceptions.
Don't view that as choice.
Well, sure it is.
Belief systems may be a choice, but...
I, for one, do not believe in the spiritual realm. And that's a choice that I decided to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, stand by. We'll be back on the other side of this break. X-Zone Nation. You're listening to us from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, simultv.com and xchroniclesnewspaper.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. futureofgodamen.com. John B. Alexander is our guest, www.johnbalexander.com. Just to go back to what I was saying before we went to the break, John, just because somebody does not believe in spiritualism or the presence of a spiritual world coexisting with the spiritual world doesn't mean they're any different than you and I.
No, they're just not as observant.
Well, that's your opinion, sir. That's your. Oh, wait a sec. Hold on here. That is your opinion?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a specific example, and you can do what you want with it. You probably have not heard of Chico Xavier, right?
Right.
Okay. This is Brazilian, again, very, very famous, and anybody interested should look it up. There's a movie about his whole life. But the point was that he had a very troubled life, but ended up publishing about 400 different books, all of which are psychographs, meaning that they were supposedly channeled from some unknown entity source on the other side. Millions of copies in print, none of which he took credit for writing himself. A couple of years ago, however, after Chico died, there were a number of letters that were obtained that he had, again, produced from a psychographic state from an individual who was known in his incarnate state. So what happened is that they compared the information about the individual, again, whose background and everything was known, compared that with the material that Chico had produced from a psychographic state. He did not know the individual when they were alive. And this was done by the University of São Paulo, by the way. And what they found was that there was a 98% accuracy in the information that Chico produced, and the remaining 2% just could not be determined. Now, clearly, that is coming, from someplace.
But what happens if that analysis would have been done by a Western university? Would the results be the same?
Excuse me? I understood that São Paulo was in the Western Hemisphere.
All right, let's try a Canadian or a U.S. university. Would the results have been the same?
There are very few that are willing to take it. The problem is we have a materialistic view of the world that says that we're going to chop things into smaller and smaller pieces, and we will eventually get to the God particle. What we did with the Large Hadron Collider is to come up with about, the Higgs boson. As soon as they found that, shortly thereafter, they said, oops, that wasn't it. We had pentaquarks below that. We spent $17 billion for supporting the collider so far. And what are you getting for that? How much money, despite the interest of that, to certainly a small number of theoretical physicists, compared to the amount of research that has gone into these issues of continuation of consciousness, into UFOs, into any of these things. The evidence in favor is simply overwhelming.
If it is so,
Radin puts it, if psi were a crime, it would be convicted easily.
But if it is so, if the evidence is so overwhelming, as many within the different fringe belief ratios and narratives like to say it is, how come mainstream?
What's fringe?
Well, the paranormal is fringe. UFOs are fringe. Cryptozoology is fringe.
That's absolutely not true. Again, coming from the military, we had basically every sensor system we have picks up UFOs.
Then how come mainstream science isn't looking into it? Why is it that?
No, that is an interesting question. The reason is because of attitudes such as the one that's being portrayed here.
Well, what do you mean, the
Quite
attitude?
frankly, these things are not career-enhancing. And the problem is that people do call it fringe. They do look at it askance, primarily because of what happens in mainstream media and a basic assumption of the skeptics, which have dominated it, that says it can't be, therefore it isn't.
But why
But
is
again, my whole premise in the book is a whole series of things that we have experienced and documented that physically can't happen, but absolutely did.
But how did you validate everything that happened in your book, sir? How did you, was it?
How did I lived it. I'll give you a specific example. I think voodoo's in there. It would be a great one. Well, first of all, you can eliminate everything you think you know about voodoo from movies and television and things like that. In Western Africa, we were in Togo and Benin and been in Ghana, attending the services with specifically with fire. And the things we saw there and that I took pictures of and felt the heat from, very, very close. We're talking range of a few feet away. But people standing in the fire, sitting in the fire, eating the fire. I have taken it to magicians, and one of the misnomers is that we never had magicians involved. It's patently not true. They strictly defy the law of thermodynamics. Should have burned, didn't burn.
All right, that's okay. I don't know what to say about that. But when it comes to the
let me give you another example. The reason we got into psychokinesis to begin with, I mentioned Uri Geller had done the preview for my book. There was a guy, an astrophysicist by the name of Jack Houck, who worked at then McDonnell Douglas, who came up with a process whereby we could actually teach people mental bending. And there were incidents that happened that strictly defied, our understanding. What got us really interested is we had heard about these things. Jack was at my apartment in Northern Virginia at the time. I had about 20 people present, including my boss, who was General Stubblebine, and he was sitting across from who was a well-known psychic, Anne Gaiman. Again, this had maybe about after an hour, but the point was she's holding two forks, most of us were at the time, at the base, and all of a sudden this fork drops over a full 90 degrees with absolutely no physical force applied. Now, we had seen lots of that kind of bending as I ended up teaching probably thousands of people. And what we didn't advertise at the time, we were doing it at some fairly high-level military circles. And these events periodically happen. Now, the question is, how does that happen? We don't know, and that's what I would argue we really need to be investigating.
I agree. But just, why isn't mainstream science checking all this out? Is it the possibility?
It's not career enhancing.
Or is it not? Maybe it's just not important enough to enough people to make it worthwhile and spending money on research on this type of anomaly.
Is 100% of the population not important?
Well, the population is, sir, but the claims of spoon bending, I agree. I know Uri. I know of his act. I know of his abilities. But I don't want to go running out to find out how he does it. It's nice. Okay, thank you. Let's get on to the serious things in life, like taking care of the homeless, taking care of the hungry, making sure the sick are taken care of, and our senior citizens and the veterans.
I don't think that these are necessarily disparate agendas. And particularly if you take it into the spiritual realm. But as far as, should we be nicer to people? Absolutely.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. is there I think, a benefit in understanding whether or not consciousness continues beyond, physical death? Yeah.
But what is
Also,
the need in
work
knowing
in
that?
Hospice movement, and how do you ease these transitions? I think those are critical issues.
But what is the need in knowing if there's life after death? Why can't we just accept that there may not be life? Why are there so many people trying their very best to go, especially in this time of internet trash and garbage, to spew all this misinformation out there in the hopes of, number one, selling themselves, number two, selling their books, and number three, God only knows what. What is the significance of knowing if there's life after death?
Well, first of all, it impacts 100% of the population. And I will argue that the evidence in favor is, I personally put that in a, we know that now, understanding what and how and all of the parameters of that, they clearly don't understand that aspect very well. I don't know why should we learn anything? I mean, if you look at the stupid things people do and invest their time and effort in,
isn't that
amount of money that's wasted in discretionary spending is
but once again, it's their choice whether they want to do it or not. That's what life is about, choice.
Oh, stupidity is authorized.
All right, stand by, sir. We've got to take our break. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. This is the X Zone, and John B. Alexander and I will be back after this break. Don't go away.
Okay.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howell will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Why don't you think, John, that more scientists don't take the topics that you talk about in your book, Reality Denied, seriously?
Well, first of all, our educational system begins with the premise that it can't be, therefore it isn't. And it is very much rooted in a mechanistic view of the universe. Another aspect is kind of the discussion that we're having. If you understand how science works, we haven't mentioned, my second career was at Los Alamos National Laboratory, so I dealt with, many of the, top scientists throughout the world. But if you are going to get funded, you have got to be able to, state your premise, and a lot of it's on personal credibility. I will tell you that Scientific American has taken me on personally in an ad hominem way. And what's most interesting is that the discussion had nothing to do with phenomena. What they had taken umbrage with was my work in the creation of the non-lethal weapons, and that is a whole concept for projection and application of force. And what they basically said was, I think the quote was, since Alexander's beliefs are different from most scientists, his judgment must be questioned. Scientists see this, and they know, as I said, not career enhancing. I had many of these top people were personal friends, many of them interested, but also saying, hey, just keep me informed, but don't use my name. It's a fear of ridicule.
Who would benefit from research into this phenomenon, do you believe?
Everybody.
How so?
How so? Well, again, it depends on which aspects you wish to address. You had mentioned before healing psych and that. There are certainly, when you get into alternative healing methods, and the ones that I've seen around the world, there is much more out there than allopathic medicine. We went down that route a little over a century ago, and that had to do with money. It said, we will fund your medical schools provided you teach allopathy, which says, by the way, I own pharmaceutical companies, and I want to make a hell of a lot of money, using pharmaceutical aspects. So we don't want to hear about things that say, maybe I don't have to take more pills.
Could it be...
I mean, there is a financial aspect to this.
Well, listen, in this life, I don't know anything that there isn't a financial aspect to. Let's be honest. Everybody's out to make a buck. Everybody. I do this to get paid.
That is a very American approach. I'll give you an example. I was down in the Amazon, and we were down there for a while. We were in a very remote area. It was a cabin, but cooking took place literally in a pile of stones. And I was out there watching the cooks as they were preparing the meal and whatnot. And I'm just kind of staring at them, and this young lady comes over and starts, I tend not to smile a lot. People who know me know that. Don't have a great sense of humor. But, she pushed my left up. In other words, smile. These are people who look up to dirt in a level of poverty and yet have an understanding of happiness that I think exceeds what most would find here in the U.S. I think that's one of our problems. We have tied everything to this materialistic view, and you got to have the, latest, greatest. What are we on now with iPhones and whatnot?
All right, but when you're talking about alternative medicine, how can we give credibility to people who live in the jungles compared to our scientific community?
Because it works.
So does our scientific community.
But I am not anti-science. As I said, second career was at the National Laboratory.
Well, isn't pharmaceuticals a science?
And they have done something. But the point is, there's an awful lot that has been missed. Let me give a specific example that I came into. I was shot down in Vietnam and had back trouble, and found actually a flight surgeon when I was stationed in Hawaii there, and his treatment, believe it or not, was sticking needles in, acupuncture.
Sure.
The things that has been around for centuries, what you can do with acupuncture that overcomes the need for anesthesia, absolutely amazing. Does it work? Yep. Do we use it? Nope.
I know a number of hospitals where they use acupuncture.
There's a few now.
Mm-hmm. It has to be
very few, but I'll defy you to find one. If you would, I would love to learn about it.
I'll send you a list.
They're actually using acupuncture for in place of anesthesia for operations. That was being demonstrated in China, well, for centuries, but we became aware of it maybe 40, 50 years ago.
What was it that brought you to the world of the paranormal? You seem to be, you talk about voodoo, you talk about UFOs, your experiences in Brazil, shamanism. So where did your focus start? What happened in your life to bring you to the world of the paranormal?
Well, first, there was no epiphany, and I get asked that question quite a bit. Just kind of always been interested. I was very lucky to go to an extremely unusual grade school. It was part of what became the University of Wisconsin at La Crosse. And they happened to have had literally a grade school, and it was very progressive education. By the way, student-teacher ratio was generally 6-to-1, so that alone had aspects of it. But one of the first things I remember that still have conscious recollection of in the UFO phenomena is in 1947 actually giving a radio broadcast, which we had internal capability of doing, about UFOs. Why interest? I don't know, but I've always been interested in these unusual things. But have not had a near-death experience, have seen UFOs, but the other things just came along. A lot of it more recently has to do with my wife, Victoria, who was particularly interested in ayahuasca and got us involved with shamans, again, all over the world, as you mentioned.
As the past president of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, what is the latest on the near-death scenario, near-death experiences?
Well, latest, I don't know. I'm sure when somebody's having one as we speak. As you read literature on it, as I mentioned, a lot of this happened because Elizabeth became Kubler-Ross became the head of my doctoral committee.
Right.
I also had experiences, ones that I talk about, that defy explanation. I'm interested in ones where you had either spontaneous healing that cannot be accounted for, or people acquired information that would not normally be available to them by any known means. Some of this precognitive and whatnot. The other work that's going on, it's interesting, this past weekend I was with an individual who was talking about the transition of his mother, father, and best friend, and said in every case he personally observed spirit leaving the body. Raymond Moody has talked now about mutual experiences where you have, rather than just relying on the information from an individual, but having a number of people involved in pieces of the incident at the time.
Well, John, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight here on the X Zone and X Zone Nation. I would give you out his website, but, you know, he doesn't think very highly of money, and he really doesn't think very highly of anybody who doesn't agree with him. He really doesn't think very highly, from what I've gathered over the near hour I've spoken to the gentleman, about anything outside of the realm of what he believes. So I'm not going to promote his book. I'm not going to promote his website. In fact, I have a hard time understanding why the hell he wrote his book for. You know, he talks about voodoo. That's nice. He talks about UFOs. You know, we really didn't get into the crux of things on what he believed and what he didn't, or why. He said that, there were basically, when he was in the military, that the equipment picked these up. Well, what were these? How do we know? You see, and like any other subject, topic, it is paranormal. It is fringe. A PhD doesn't mean that you're God. You know, in most cases, it's piled higher and deeper. I would rather have faith in the Western technology, Western medicine. I would give more credit to somebody who works at a pharmaceutical plant than in the back bushes of Brazil. And if you need psychotropic drugs to get a high in order for you to see spirits, well, hello, there's a reason why you're seeing spirits if you're taking psychotropic drugs. And don't forget, they still live in the bush. There's a reason for that. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.